After my husband passed, I moved in with my son and daughter-in-law to be closer to my grandchildren. They turned my life into a prison. Food, bathroom access, everything required permission. At the family meeting, Caitlin announced, "You're a burden now. It's time for assisted living." Everyone agreed. I simply nodded and left the room. The next morning, they found my note. "I went to the facility you chose for me." But when they saw the property deed I left behind, their world completely collapsed. My husband died last year from a heart attack. It happened fast. One moment he was laughing at a joke on TV, the next he was gone. 42 years of marriage, ended in an instant. I was with him in the hospital when the machines went quiet. When it was over, I just sat in our bedroom staring at his reading glasses on the nightstand. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. I was 58 and suddenly felt like my whole world had collapsed. After the funeral, the silence was deafening. Colleagues from my old law firm sent flowers, then moved on. My church friends brought casseroles for a week, then that stopped too. My son David called occasionally, but Caitlin made the suggestion that changed everything. She said I should move in with them in Louisville, closer to the grandkids. Said it would give me purpose again. I sold the house, packed my legal documents and personal items, and moved. I didn't expect luxury, but I didn't expect what I found either. The day I arrived, Brian stayed inside scrolling his phone while I dragged my own suitcase from the taxi. Caitlin gave me a quick hug and called for the kids to greet Grandma Monica. They mumbled hellos before disappearing back to their devices. The house was impressive, modern, expensive, cold. Brian led me to the converted garage where I'd be staying. Concrete floors, space heater, pull-out couch, mini fridge. No proper kitchen, no windows, no privacy. There was a small bathroom, but before I could step inside, Brian produced a key. "This is for your bathroom," he said. "We're teaching the kids about respecting personal space. Boundaries," he added, like I was supposed to thank him. I didn't want conflict on day one. I nodded and took the key. 2 weeks after I arrived, they called a family meeting in their pristine living room. David, Caitlin, even the teenagers were there, all sitting in a semicircle like a tribunal. Brian stood at the front like he was presenting to investors. "We've been thinking about Monica's situation," he began, not even looking at me. "And we've decided that assisted living would be the best option for everyone involved." Caitlin nodded eagerly. "There's a really nice facility called Sunset Manor. They have activities, medical care, everything you need, Mom Monica." David shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The kids stared at their phones. I sat there, watching my family dispose of me like unwanted furniture. "And if I don't want to go?" I asked quietly. Brian's smile turned cold. "Monica, let's be realistic. You're becoming a burden on this household. We all agree this is what's best." The word burden hung in the air like poison. I looked around the room. No one would meet my eyes. I simply nodded and stood up. "I understand," I said calmly. "Thank you for making this so clear." From that moment on, I stayed quiet, kept to my space, ordered my own meals when I could afford it. They never invited me for family dinners. Sometimes they'd text asking me to pick up groceries or watch the kids when their sitter canceled. I always said yes, even when Brian criticized how I loaded the dishwasher, even when they had dinner parties and acted like I didn't exist. One evening, Brian asked me to keep my shoes in my area because they were cluttering the entryway. They were lined up neatly by the door. Another night, Caitlin complained about my movement noise after 9 p.m. I had used the bathroom once, walking in socks. Apparently, that was disruptive to their routine. The breaking point came when they announced their vacation to Martha's Vineyard for a week. Family time, they called it. I asked if I could join and pay my own way. Caitlin said it wasn't appropriate. Brian smirked and said, "We need some nuclear family bonding time." The irony wasn't lost on me. I offered to house sit while they were gone. Brian shrugged and said, "You'll be here anyway." That Friday morning, they loaded their BMW with designer luggage. Before leaving, Brian came to my garage and removed my car keys from the hook. "Just for safety," he said. "Don't want you having any accidents while we're gone." I asked, "Can I at least drive to the grocery store?" Brian grinned that condescending smile. "We stocked your fridge with everything you need," he said. They hadn't. After their car disappeared down the street, I opened my mini fridge. A jar of mustard and a bottle of water that had been there for weeks. That was it. I checked the main kitchen pantry. Padlocked. They had literally locked me out of the food. I opened their trash bin and found 2 unopened packages of salmon and fresh vegetables sitting on top. Perfectly good food, thrown away deliberately. Like they wanted to send me a message about my place in their hierarchy. I sat at their expensive dining table, surrounded by their success, feeling the weight of their contempt. I wasn't sad anymore. I was furious. Absolutely furious. This woman who I had helped raise, who I had supported through college and law school, who had called me crying when she couldn't afford her wedding dress. I didn't plan what I did next. It just happened. I went into Brian's home office and photographed every document I could find. But then I remembered something they had all forgotten, something that would change everything. I went to my room and pulled out the original property deed from my personal files, the deed Brian and Caitlin had never bothered to read carefully when we gave them the house as a wedding gift. The deed that showed my husband and I had retained 50% ownership. I made copies of everything, the deed, the mortgage documents showing our contributions, every receipt proving we had essentially been financing their lifestyle for years. Then I wrote my note. I went to the facility you chose for me, just as you demanded. But before I go, I thought you should know who actually owns this house. Check the deed. Check the mortgage. Check who's been paying your bills. You wanted me gone? Congratulations. You just evicted your landlords. I left the note on their kitchen counter, along with copies of the property deed and mortgage documents. Then I called a taxi and left for my new downtown condo, the one I'd secretly purchased weeks ago while they thought I was just a helpless burden. The next morning, Caitlin found my note first. I know this because my doorman called me at 7:30 a.m. to say there was a hysterical woman in the lobby demanding to see me. By 8 a.m., my phone was ringing nonstop. Brian's voice on the voicemail was barely controlled rage. "Monica, what the hell is this supposed to mean? You can't just leave documents like this and disappear. Call me back immediately." Then Caitlin, sobbing, "Mom, Monica, please, there has to be some mistake. The house can't be half yours. We've been paying the mortgage for years." But the best call came from their real estate attorney at 10 a.m. Apparently, they'd rushed to his office in a panic, demanding he prove the documents were fake. He confirmed everything. The house was indeed 50% mine. The mortgage payments they thought they'd been making? Those were mostly coming from an account my husband and I had set up years ago. They had been living in our house, on our money, while treating me like a burden. Their world hadn't just collapsed, it had been built on a foundation that was never theirs to begin with. Meanwhile, Brian left me increasingly frantic voicemails. "Monica, what the hell is this note supposed to mean? You better call me back right now. We need to talk about this situation before it gets out of hand." I sent one text response: "Check your safe. Check your contracts. Check who actually owns your house. Then we'll talk." Radio silence for 2 days. Then Caitlin called, her voice shaking. "Mom, Monica, what did you do? Brian says you took something from his office. This isn't like you. Please come home so we can work this out." I blocked both their numbers after that. The only thing that hurt was knowing I'd probably never see my grandchildren again. But I'd already made peace with that reality. They had taught their kids to see me as invisible, irrelevant. Now I was going to show them what irrelevant really looked like. 3 weeks after I moved into my new downtown condo, I started breathing like a human being again. No permission needed for anything. No locked doors. No walking on eggshells. I'd wake up at sunrise, make real coffee, sit by the window and watch the city come alive. Freedom like that, you don't appreciate it until someone tries to cage you. Sophia and I had been working around the clock. She moved into the second bedroom temporarily while we built our case. We had everything organized: financial records, property documents, evidence of emotional abuse, even security footage from their neighborhood cameras showing my imprisoned lifestyle. Sophia looked exhausted but exhilarated. "Monica, this isn't just about getting justice for you anymore. This case could set precedent for elder financial abuse. We're going to help so many people." I told her the truth: I'm not just a victim seeking revenge. I'm a lawyer who got played by amateurs. Time to remind them what a professional looks like. Things were progressing smoothly until I noticed Caitlin's Mercedes parked across from my building. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I'd just returned from meeting with a financial advisor, saw her distinctive silver sedan with tinted windows. She wasn't trying to hide, she wanted me to see her. After an hour, she drove away. 2 days later, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a printed email thread between Brian and someone named Marcus discussing the Monica problem and expediting the conservatorship process. There was also a photo of me entering my lawyer's office, with a note, "We know exactly what you're doing. Stop now, or we'll make you stop." The next morning, someone had keyed my car and left a dead bird on my windshield. Security cameras caught a figure in a hoodie, but the face wasn't visible. The gate looked familiar though, Brian's distinctive swagger even when he was trying to be stealthy. I didn't call the police. I had a better idea. Something much more effective than involving local law enforcement. I called Sophia and scheduled a meeting with someone she'd mentioned before, a federal investigator who specialized in financial fraud. I told her everything, the harassment, the surveillance, but most importantly, those contracts I'd photographed from Brian's safe. I asked one question: if someone was running investment scams and using intimidation tactics, who would be interested in that information? She smiled that predatory lawyer smile. "Oh, I know exactly who would love to hear about this." We restructured everything, locked it down with federal-level security measures, made sure Brian and Caitlin were legally severed from every asset. Power of attorney, revoked. Health proxy, transferred to Sophia. She even helped me establish a foundation for elder abuse victims using part of my estate. Just when I thought everything was secure, Brian showed up at my condo building. Middle of the afternoon. I was checking my mail in the lobby. He strode in like he owned the place, designer suit, fake confidence radiating from every pore. "Monica, we need to have a conversation," he said, flashing that practice smile he used on his investment clients. I didn't respond. "I know you've been busy. Lawyers, trusts, financial restructuring. I get it. You're angry. But we're still family here." He moved closer, invading my personal space. I recognized that look, the same predatory calm he used when closing deals. Then he said something that revealed his true nature. "You really think it's smart to leave everything to some ambulance chaser and her nonprofit fantasy? Think that's what your husband would have wanted?" I stood perfectly still. Didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Then I said, "You need to leave this building immediately." He didn't move. He actually chuckled. "I just wanted you to know we're challenging everything. The will, the property transfers, all of it. You're clearly not mentally competent. We have documentation of your depression, your isolation. We'll prove you've been manipulated." I didn't flinch. I simply walked to the elevator and pressed the button. 10 minutes later, I called Sophia and told her what happened. She said we'd start documenting every interaction, suggested enhanced security measures, complete digital surveillance. That night I warned my doorman to never let Brian or Caitlin into the building again. They had escalated this, and they were about to discover what a real legal war looked like. After Brian's visit, I knew they were desperate enough to try anything. I hired a private security firm that night. 24-hour monitoring, personal protection when needed, and comprehensive background checks on anyone who came near me. Sophia helped coordinate everything so it would be admissible evidence if we needed it in court. 4 days later, Caitlin appeared in my lobby. She didn't call ahead. She somehow talked her way past security and was waiting by the elevators when I returned from my morning walk. "Mom, Monica, please. We need to fix this." My doorman immediately called up the stairs. I came down and found her there, looking disheveled. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed, no makeup, eyes swollen from crying. For a moment, I wondered if she had come to apologize. She hadn't. She thrust a manila envelope at me. "This is a conservatorship petition," she said, voice shaking. "You're obviously being taken advantage of. You've abandoned your real family, given away our inheritance to strangers, and we can't let you destroy everything Dad worked for." I felt my heart stop. I opened the envelope. It was legitimate. She'd hired a probate attorney. Claimed I was suffering from dementia and financial exploitation. Claimed Sophia was manipulating a grieving widow. That's what they called me in the legal papers, a vulnerable widow susceptible to undue influence. I held the documents, looked directly at her, and asked the only question that mattered: do you genuinely believe I'm mentally incompetent, or are you just angry that I'm not funding your lifestyle anymore? Caitlin's face crumpled. She turned and ran toward the exit, sobbing like the entitled child she'd apparently always been. I stood in that lobby, pulse racing. She wanted to declare me mentally unfit, strip away my autonomy, control my assets like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with her own money. I went upstairs and showed Sophia the paperwork. Her eyes blazed with professional fury. "They'll come after me next," she said. "They've already labeled me as your exploiter." "I don't care what they call you," I said. "I just want them to understand what they've started." The next morning, Sophia filed a comprehensive response to dismiss the conservatorship petition. She also initiated a federal investigation request into Brian's investment practices, citing the documents I'd photographed. She warned me this would get vicious before it was over, but we had resources they couldn't imagine. She was absolutely right. 3 weeks later, I received a visit from Adult Protective Services. Someone had filed a report claiming I was being financially exploited by my attorney and showing signs of severe cognitive decline. They interviewed me for 2 hours, examined my living situation, even requested medical evaluations. Sophia was livid when they left. "I knew it," she said grimly. "They're trying to create an official record of incompetency claims." The investigation was closed within a week. The social workers concluded I was completely competent and living independently by choice. But the psychological damage was intended. They wanted me to feel hunted, questioned, doubted. That evening, I called Sophia with a new directive. I told her I was done playing defense. I wanted to go on the offensive and expose everything they'd done. So we started our deep dive. Turns out Brian's investment advisory firm, really just a Ponzi scheme he ran from a WeWork space, was already under federal investigation. Sophia found 5 pending lawsuits. One involved an elderly couple who claimed Brian had promised guaranteed returns that never materialized. Another was a teacher who said he'd stolen her entire retirement fund for a risk-free government bond portfolio. When we accessed financial records through legal channels, it got much worse. Brian had leveraged everything: their house, cars, even the kids' college funds. They were drowning in debt. My assessment? That's exactly why they suddenly wanted me declared incompetent and my assets under their control. I had evidence now. Concrete proof they were fraudsters, manipulators, criminals. But then they made it personal again. I woke up one morning to find a dead crow on my doorstep. Neck twisted, wings spread, blood still fresh. Security footage caught a figure in dark clothing around 4 a.m., moving with that distinctive limp Brian had developed after his skiing accident. I forwarded the video to police and my attorney. This time they responded immediately. Brian received an official visit, and suddenly I had serious leverage. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. I was waiting, because I had developed a comprehensive strategy, and it was almost time to make them experience everything they had put me through. A few days after the dead bird incident, Brian and Caitlin went completely silent. No more harassment calls, no more surprise visits. Sophia said the restraining order against Brian was being finalized. Adult Protective Services had closed my case. It appeared they were retreating, possibly realizing they were outmatched. But I knew better. They weren't surrendering. They were preparing their nuclear option. Then it happened. I received official court documents. Caitlin had filed for complete financial guardianship. She was attempting to prove I was mentally incompetent to manage my own assets. She had submitted an email I'd sent her during my darkest grief period after my husband's death. I had written, "I don't understand why I'm still here. Some days I wish I could just sleep forever." She weaponized my grief. Told the court I was suicidal and delusional. Said I was being manipulated by an unscrupulous attorney with a history of exploiting vulnerable clients. Sophia claimed I was irrationally distributing my inheritance to strangers. I had 30 days to respond before a court-appointed psychiatrist would evaluate my mental competency. It was the most vicious attack they could have launched. Sophia was furious when she read the documents. Said she didn't want to be the catalyst for my family's legal assault on me. I told her the reality: you didn't cause anything. They revealed who they really are. But here's what I haven't revealed yet. I had been orchestrating my own counterattack for months. The moment Brian first threatened my autonomy, I began systematically documenting everything: every conversation, every visit, the social services manipulation, the guardianship attempt, even the dead bird terrorism. I compiled a comprehensive dossier with video evidence, recorded calls, text message screenshots, security footage, and documented proof of their fraudulent claims. Sophia organized it into a legal brief titled Elder Abuse and Financial Exploitation, a case study. But that wasn't my only preparation. I had also engaged a former FBI financial crimes investigator. Cost me $8,000, but it was the best investment I ever made. And what she discovered: Brian had been systematically committing identity theft. He had opened 3 credit accounts using my social security number, charged over $12,000 in personal expenses, luxury items, and travel costs. He even financed their Martha's Vineyard vacation with my stolen identity. He had concealed it by having all statements sent to a private mailbox he rented under a false name. Federal crime. That was my checkmate move. I immediately contacted the credit reporting agencies, froze all accounts, and filed a federal criminal complaint. Sophia submitted copies to the court handling the conservatorship case along with our motion to dismiss. Within a week, Caitlin's attorney withdrew from the case. Too much criminal exposure, too many provable lies. But I was just getting started. I initiated a comprehensive civil lawsuit against Brian for identity theft, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. Sophia presented every piece of evidence we had accumulated: the investment fraud, the social services manipulation, the intimidation tactics, the credit card theft, and the psychological terrorism campaign. I also included sworn statements from my doorman, security personnel, my doctors, and the private investigator. Caitlin attempted to salvage the situation. She called me, voice breaking, "Mom Monica, I had no idea Brian was doing those things. I never meant for this to hurt you. I was just terrified you were making terrible financial decisions." I asked her one direct question: why didn't you stop him when he locked the bathroom and made me ask permission to eat? Complete silence. Then I said, "You watched your husband treat your mother-in-law like a prisoner. You stirred soup while he stripped away my dignity." She broke down completely. I ended the call. 6 months later, the federal court delivered its verdict. Brian was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for identity theft and financial fraud. He was also ordered to pay $47,000 in restitution and damages. His investment firm was permanently shut down by the SEC. He attempted to rebuild his reputation with a new financial consulting venture, but word travels fast in professional circles. That's the reality about financial predators: once their methods are exposed, no legitimate client will trust them again. Caitlin filed for divorce 8 months later. I received her letter requesting a meeting to rebuild our relationship. I didn't respond. I relocated from Louisville shortly after the trial concluded. I transferred full ownership of my condo to Sophia. She had earned it through her brilliant legal work. She was so moved she could barely speak. I also established a $100,000 fund for her nonprofit organization dedicated to elder abuse prevention. Then I packed my belongings and left Kentucky permanently. I purchased a charming house in a small Missouri town, complete with a wraparound porch and established garden. I became active in the local community center, developed friendships at the neighborhood coffee shop, and even began volunteering at the animal rescue facility on weekends. Occasionally I still think about Caitlin. I remember the version of her who used to help me bake cookies when she was 12, asking me endless questions about law school and my career. But that curious, respectful young woman no longer exists. And I finally understood something profound: genetics don't create family. Mutual respect does. And when you allow someone to treat you as an inconvenience long enough, you internalize that worthlessness. Until the moment you refuse to accept it anymore. That's when everything transforms. They attempted to destroy my spirit, but I reconstructed my life with people who valued me. And I will never allow anyone to diminish my worth again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button for more content.